Okay, hi guys, how we're doing? Now let me say up front, I may have to cut this one a little bit early tonight. My wife's not doing too good. She's been home for a couple of days, ill, running a little bit of a fever. So if she texts me, I got to call it quits a little early. Other than that, we'll try to run the normal time frame. But spring has sprung down here, so we've got that weather that's one day it's hot and muggy and fairly cool and comfortable the next. And I'm seeing there's going to be a cool front at the end of the month. They're predicting a good evening, Tiny Titan, of a cold snap coming down from the Arctic that we might actually get some cooler temperatures right at the end of the month. I'm looking forward to that. I want to see that. Will, good evening. Diane, good evening. Justin, hello. Worm Wrangler, hello. Herbert, hello there. Hello to North Carolina. Hello, Earl. How are things in Syracuse, New York? Brad, hello. Clyde, good evening. Oh, yeah, y'all got 5 inches of rain coming to Texas. Yeah, this pattern they hold the weather that normally holds over me is holding over Texas. So, good evening, North Alabama. Hello, Michael in Texas. Hello, Mike in Washington State. I saw that Tiny Titan. Y'all got that heat bubble sitting there that come up from the lower levels. That's looking like it's going to spread all the way up into Canada and etc. Hello there, Skibby. Thomas, hello. Good evening, Justin. Sportsmobile 83. Hello to Georgia. Benton, good evening. Well, what's new and exciting in everybody's life? Everybody been getting out and getting some camping or working on some gear or whatever. I've been doing a little bit of both. Um, I have to kind of take it easy right now. We went and did my little checkup, and Doc wants me to kind of lay back just a little bit, about a week, and see if I can get some numbers where he wants me. So I'm taking a kind of a siesta this week and not working as much as I normally do for my stuff, which drives me crazy. I'm one of them people, I just can't sit still. And so whenever the doc says, I want you to just sit on the couch, don't do anything for a week, well, I'm going to have a stack of books. It's time to start reading and making notes. I've gone through one complete book and made notes on it. Now I'm starting on three others I've got. I want to try to get all four of them done between now and next Tuesday. We shall see. Hello, Michael in Virginia. Chuck, good evening. Tiny Titan, yeah, I hope that the weather does stay cool because if I get the green light next Tuesday, I hope to go out and camp out before it turns ridiculously hot where it's just no fun to be out there and you're sitting there sweating all the time. I'm hoping to get a little bit more camping in before those days show up. Good evening, the preacher. How you doing in Kansas, sir? Benton, awesome. When I was young, going crappie fishing was a big thing. We did it at night. We'd go up here to Lake Eufaula, and we'd have lights that we put over the side of the boat. And everybody was always looking for these big metal globes, and they'd sit there and shine them up, and then paint them with chrome paint, and get 100-watt DC powered light bulb. You could still buy such things back in the days and shine the light down in the water. And we'd crappie fish at night on Lake Eufaula with rods, reels, and cane poles out yonder at the edge trying to catch crappie. And it was a lot of work, but it was a lot of fun too. Zippy to doo, yeah, the snakes are out, brother. They are going. Got to keep it. Right now it's breeding season, so they're traveling to get the males go way outside their normal range now, trying to find females. Females will stay in their normal little nook. So you've never seen a snake here, and suddenly there's snakes everywhere. It's because you're probably at a crossroads. The good news is usually by the end of June, that's kind of petered out, and they've all returned to their normal, regular scheduled function channels, and you won't have as much trouble. But it's right now. Don't go out walking at night without a flashlight, because they never any snakes there. Now there is, because they're looking for a female. Elvin, good evening. James, good evening. Sports Mobile, we're tilling the garden and planting more than double the garden this year. I've already had tomatoes come in. I got squash come in. I got lettuce. We've already been eating salads off of that. And my zucchini is going, and so is my squash. The sugar peas gave me one harvest, and that was it, and everything's withering. So I haven't been playing with them, so I've got to go back and do a little research and see what I did wrong, because they just withered, and I don't know what happened to that, but hopefully I'll get that in too. Ryan Bishop, hello. Brad, hello. Jonathan Frisbee, hello, brother. No apologies. Blackie, what do you think of Indian-made muskets? They are fairly decent. No, they're not the top, but let me tell you, the original trade guns were not either. I've known several people that have got them and used them and been very happy with them. I've heard the story about something blew up. Everybody tells that story about some gun that blew up at a thing, but nobody knows any more facts beyond that. And I think that's disinformation that's been put out, because Italy's got a lot of money invested in this. And if India comes in and starts making these muskets at a cheaper price, I mean, a pair of sold is $1,500 and $500 for an Indian musket. I don't like to finish so much. And if I got one, I would strip it and refinish it myself. But I view it kind of like a kick gun. Yes, I know I got to drill out the flash hole in it. But as long as it's going to be a smooth bore and I use reasonable loads, it should do just fine. Poor boy, okay. I'm glad you're getting to sit by the campfire. Bushcraft with the Preacher, what's your opinion of the 58 Remington Model Army and 44? Really good gun. I have one in the sheriff's model, the shorter barrel. And most of my career has always been a Colt man. I've always had all the Colts. But at the same time, the Remington is a very viable gun. Shoots really well, usually out of the box if you do no tinkering. Usually a Remington will outshoot a Colt in group sizes. Usually, not every time, but they normally do very, very well. And my little short Remington shoots very, very well, and I'm very happy with it. In fact, I saw where Taylor and Company's got ones drop-in cylinders out for it right now for 200 something bucks, and I already got 45 long Colt in the power band they're looking for. So I'm thinking real hard about a drop-in cylinder, so I'll have dual cylinders with that. Be a very handy companion. I've carried mine in the field many times. Nick, yeah, out there in southern Colorado, you're right in that turbulent area right now, where it's going to be either bone dry air or rain. I mean, it's just back and forth. Jeff, hello. Martin, hello to New Zealand. Hey, Blackie, hope to see more videos of you and Grouch. How long did his dog stay mad at you for eating his food? The rest of his life. 8 more years. And that other half, the other hour, of me and him talking will post this Sunday. I just didn't want to post a 2.5-hour video. But I will post it for this Sunday. So you get to see the rest of me and him talking. And I'm going to be going back out there. I went over and picked up a canoe. And I'm going back to pick up another canoe from him once I get back in shape. I'll go back over and I'm going to get another canoe from him. And I'll probably will sit down and talk some more. I know exactly where Wetumpka is, Chuck. And of course, Fort Toulouse. We know where that's at too, don't we? Justin, Blackie, what's in your swamp kit? Whole lot of bug spray. Going in the swamps. If I'm going in the swamps, it's usually either I'm going to gather food, hunting, or whatever. Swamps are fantastic places to find pockets of fish, game, etc. They come out of the regular and they go into those places because there's so little man. Man is usually scared of swamps, and so that's a perfect place for them. That's one see it's such a growing place for snakes, alligators, and all that stuff. But it's also usually just teeming with life. So if I'm on, had to run a trot line in them deep swamps is a real good place to run it because very few people are going to come out here looking for it because they're scared of the snakes and the gators. Usually I'm not definitely going to be on the ground. I'm going to be in the air. I'm definitely going to have a big hammock and get me up in the air. I'm definitely going to go and put me some 360 around me, sharpened stakes driven in the ground facing outward. So if a gator comes up during the night, he's got to make racket. So I'll know he ain't just going to walk up to the bottom of my hammock and get a taco. So those are the type of things I'm going to do or carry. I'm definitely going to be carrying an axe. I'm definitely going to be carrying a saw. Definitely going to carry some snare wire for various purposes. Of course, your fishing kit, trot lines, etc. Used to carry a 5-gallon bucket in the front of my canoe just full of trot line stuff. And the second 5-gallon bucket was carrying snares and things like that. So there's a lot of stuff in there. Justin, Blackie, have you ever loaded 45 or 44 Winchester with black powder substitute? Yes, I've used Power Decks and a couple others that have come along the way, and I've shot them straight black before. And they perform a lot better than you think. In fact, when you put 38 or so grains of 3F black powder into a 45 Colt, compress it down, put the full bullet into it, do it as a 2-step where you compress the load down, then you seat the bullet so it doesn't deform the bullet. There's a lot of power in that cartridge. You can see why Great Granddaddy called it a thumb buster. So yeah, they can function really well with that. Garen, good evening, Florida. James, you've got a conversion cylinder on a 58. Good. I've been on the fence about it. I've got a 71 Uberti cartridge conversion 1860 Army that's already manufactured in 45 Colt. And I've just had that 58 Remington for several years. And I've often thought about putting a drop-in cylinder into it. So I think I'm on a probably early summer, I'm going to go ahead and take the plunge and go ahead and get me one of them cylinders to drop into. And of course, I'll do videos talking about it, checking it, seeing how it works, etc. Yeah, Bushcraft Preacher. Yeah, 58 is really, I recommend them. If somebody has never shot any black powder and they want to buy one and start with the 58. It's the closest to our modern guns in feel and sights and etc. And therefore, they normally score better to begin with. Once they get comfortable with that, then go to the Colt with a 3-piece take apart and everything else. That I love the Colt, but at the same time, I realize from a start out point of view, it would just be better to start out with a solid frame Remington. Ryan Bishop, what's your favorite outdoor related fiction books? The Man and the Boy, and The Boy Grows Up, Let me see. I have to think about that, to tell you the truth. I'll think about that. But yeah, um, when I do my library, which I have not forgot, I mentioned that to you guys. I'm compiling a list. I'm going to do a library video. I'm going to go through my library and I'll talk about other books. I don't read that much fiction. I did a lot of historical fiction back when I was doing living history. And I read a lot of that. But a lot of my stuff is I try to find first person accounts and knowledge of things. And so that's kind of my favorite genre. I read fiction for just pure enjoyment. And a lot of times, if it's going to be fiction, it's probably going to be Star Trek or science fiction or something. Completely off base from Bushcraft, but actually find it pretty interesting. And it gives my mind something to wander out into a little bit. Fred, hello. Oh, yeah, Chuck, you're right there at Toulouse. Clyde Summers, Getting in the Swamps. J. Wayne Fears did a really good book. J. Wayne's from my state. He was an Alabama, I think he was a forester or a game warden, one of the two. And he did a book on swamp camping and going out there. He's an accomplished author. And so I recommend you read that book. And a lot of you guys that are into wanting to set up your own place, he's also got a great book called Your Dream Cabin that I recommend being in everybody's library because it brings up things I'd have never thought to think about. And but he's got a book specifically on swamp camping, so you might want to check that out. Ryan got stuff. Then you want to know if you're not going to use man-made bug repellent, you're going to want to know American Beautyberry. That's about the most effective natural bug repellent that I found out there, other than a good coat of dirt. If the bugs are eating you up, pick up a handful of dirt and start smearing. They're attracted to our skin and what we're exuding. And usually when you get good and dirty, they just don't seem to smell us as much. And you look at a lot of the native peoples and they always look so dirty. Well, there's a reason. Bugs didn't bother them as much. And so there is a purpose for that too. Fred, glad you liked the video. James Singer, Blackie, Midway carries a conversion cylinder for the Rogers and Spencer, depending on who made it. Ooh. I don't know if I'm going to do that one. Since I've got the 71 conversion, that's the 1860 Army made to be a 45 Colt. That kind of fits that big end genre to me. And getting the cylinder to drop into the short, handy 58, which would be just a 45 up close. I've even thought about getting a 45 ACP drop-in cylinder for it because I remember old-time calibers you probably never heard of, like 45 Auto Rim. And I've got a box of brass around here somewhere and some dies for those. And I can put a 45 Colt 250 grain bullet into basically a 45 ACP case. And so it's got a good womp, but not a lot of thunder. So play with a lot of stuff. Let's see. Blackie, can you load the Kerr bullet into a case? I'm pretty sure you can, but you got to remember it's too big, so it's going to have to size it going in. But you're not getting any advantage over a stock 45 Colt. And in fact, I don't know if it would be as effective. All the conversion conical ball to go into a 45 have a shaft that's, let's say, 451, and then a bigger section that's like 458, 459. Well, that's going to shear off going into brass. So you just turned it into a 45, 451 or 452 slug. And so it'd be very difficult to load it into a cartridge. Could it be done? Yes. But a heel type cartridge like that would mean you need to cut the brass short and set it on top just like you did in the cylinder. So you got to modify your brass. So now you got to keep track of this is a 44 and this is a modified 44. This is a 45 Colt and this is a modified. And so it can be done, but you got to understand it's not the same. It's not apples to apples there. Okay, what was this? Mike Bolton, just for giggles, I have tried loading 7.6239 with triple F black powder. I just filled the whole case, compressed it while seating, used a light crimp, got 1,800 feet per second. Yeah. When they first started saying that they were going to have black powder hunting seasons, they had to refine that the very next year, the language, because it said firearms using black powder. Well, people were loading black powder into 30-06s, 270s, 300 Winchester magnums. They'd fill the case to the top, pack it down tight, and put a bullet on top of it. And so then they had to come back and say, no, it has to be flintlock or percussion ignition. And then they came out with inline muzzle loaders trying to do that. But back in the late 70s when they started doing the black powder seasons, and they said, black powder only. I know some rednecks who filled 30-06 cases solid full of black powder to go hunt because they want to get in the woods 2 weeks earlier. So, yeah, but it will work. You can put them at 7.6239, 223, whatever. But the problem with it is trying to shoot it in the AKs and all like them that shoot 7.6239, all them hard chrome chambers and them hard chrome gas systems, they'll hold it better because of the corrosiveness. They're used to corrosive ammunition. But if you get something like an AR, they're not going to function real well with it. They'll function for a time. That teeny little gas tube is not going to take fouling worth a flip. So that's the one drawback. But worst comes to worst, yeah, you can make it go bang and have it be fairly effective. Nick, any suggestions for a stealth shelter in the sand? Yeah, you got to make an Apache fighting hole. What you do is you dig a coffin-shaped trench down deep enough that whenever I lay my cross beams across the top, I've got enough room to lay down in the space and roll over, as well as even better, sit up. Okay, but go down that deep. Then at the top, about 6-8 inches down from the top, you're going to widen it out on the outside, and you're going to lay cut timber across from both sides, leaving an opening in the middle. You're going to bury all that together. Then you're just going to have the opening in the middle. And you put something there as a entrance. It can be a bush. It can be whatever, a tumbleweed even, what the Apaches did. And they just made like a lashed together door with a tumbleweed hooked to the top of it where they could lift it up, go down in that hole, and then pull it down on top of it. And all you saw was bare sand. They'd take something and get rid of their moccasin prints coming up to it. So at a distance, you just saw a bush sitting there. You could see through the bush. There ain't nothing there. And actually, that was a fighting hole, Apache fighting hole on bare desert sand. So it works. Cheddar Pepper, do you have any thoughts on the Cobra 12 shotgun, semi-auto, gas-operated shotgun that looks like and functions like an AR, and you can get magazines for it? Okay. A gas-operated shotgun. That's the thing. That's the weakness of this system to me. Gas requires X amount of pressure. You can't go above it and you can't go below it. If you go below it, it never works. If you go above it, it doesn't work either. So you got to stay in that ballpark. There was a gentleman that he wanted to go shoot in these tactical competitions, and he wanted something very similar to that, and it was chambered in 3-inch 12 gauge. It's meant to be a breaching shotgun for law enforcement to come up and just hammer a door. And I tried to talk him out of it, and he wasn't going to hear it. And so he went and bought the gun. And he gets the gun, and then he goes and tries to drop 2 3/4-inch cheap shells in it to play with it, and it won't cycle. It's set up for that 3-inch heavy load. Well, now a magazine in that thing was a 20 round magazine he had for it. 20 rounds when a box of 5 shells was $10. You know, so we're looking at $1 at least per round. At least. Okay, $1 a round. So that's $20 for a magazine, and it's 200 rounds in a match. So that's $200 you're going to pay to shoot a match that you're going to get a $100 prize for. And you can't scale down and use the lighter shell, cheaper shells. No, you got to shoot big, heavy hammers, which means you're paying $200 for a $100 prize. And he figured it out the hard way, you know, when he went to buy all them heavy reloading components, trying to load for it. And the price was still about $1 a round because of the amount of powder it took and everything else. So, yes, those are very viable, but understand that's the Cadillac expensive gun, and it's really meant up usually for some sort of agency, some police or something that's got a budget to buy shells for it. So they work great. That's what happened with the old Spies 12 gauge when a lot of enforcement got a hold of those things, and they were set up and semi-automatic to handle the heavy stuff. That's when you could push the button and pump it, because if you want to shoot the cheap stuff, it turns it into a pump shotgun, and you had it set up to cycle with the heavy stuff. That was one of them unthought of things, that one of them hidden costs of it. A lot of guys want to get a 50 caliber belt-fed machine gun round bolt action, and then they start finding out how much some shells cost and how much it costs to reload them. It is not a cheap guy's play toy. James, I have a Ruger single action that can shoot Smith & Wesson 32 long. Can you make a shot shell for it for snakes? Yes, you're going to have to do it where it's going to be some very strong powder. Probably something meant for a 9mm or something. I had a small, don't quote. You got to do research. Okay. But it's got to be a small charge of fairly fast burning powder. You've got to put a wad into that thing. Probably thick cardboard, like 2 layers of thick cardboard. Put the shot on top of it. Put another thick layer of cardboard onto the top of it. Wax cardboard like cereal boxes, stuff like that. And then you're going to have to probably put a little bit of clear glue on it and glue it shut. And it's not going to cycle it. If it's a revolver, you're fine. You just cock it and go. And yes, you can do it. The problem is the size of the capacity. How much can it hold? Now, here's a rough rule of thumb we used to do when we were working up snake loads down here. Because where I live, we got them big Eastern Diamondbacks, you know. So sometimes it's a itty bitty snake, and sometimes this sucker scares you to death when you see it. You know, it looks like a water hose rolled up. And so you got to penetrate and you got to hurt. Take a baking potato, like when we get from the store, put it out there at about 10 feet and shoot it. If the pellets penetrate all the way through a baking potato, there's a good chance that's going to be a viable use against big snakes. If it doesn't penetrate all the way through it, you ain't got enough capacity. And that's the reason you see 44s, 45s, 44 specials, 45 ACPs are commonly loaded with snake loads, 9mm to a point. But you notice it sticks out beyond it, trying to get more capacity. The size of the case doesn't hold much capacity. So physically, yes, you can make a load. The question is, will it have enough oomph and carry enough pellet to do the job? And you're just going to have to do some research. But if it was me doing it, I would look at some of the high burning powders for like a 9mm or something, do a real light load in it and make sure I'm within my pressure levels, and load it like that. Powder, 2 thicknesses of that cardboard, the shot, and then thickness on the top, and glue it in place and try it. That's how I would do it. I will take no responsibility for what you're going to do, because you got to be the one to do your research. Can it be done? Probably. Good evening, Miss Pam. Hiram, hello. Glad you liked the video on the walking stick. Tom's Outdoors, welcome. Justin, Blackie, do you ever load brass shotgun shells? Yes, I have loaded all brass 12 gauge shotgun shells, both with black powder and with smokeless before. I even at one time had the tool set that had came out of the early 1900s for loading all brass shells, and for a time you could get them out of a Starline, sold all brass shells, and you just loaded it like a muzzle loader. Yeah, Mike Bolton knows 12 gauge with a big hollow point, it'll do some damage. Hello, Will Killingsworth. How you doing, sir? Tennessee Smoky. I know. What it is the 410 is actually made on a rifle machine rather than on a shotgun machine. The 410 is actually a caliber, not a gauge. And they actually have dies that go into the same type of machine that would make like 30-06, 308, something like that, instead of a classic 12 gauge machine. And they run them in batches. Usually somewhere in the early part of the summer, they'll run all the 410 shells they're going to have for the year. And then that's it, because they're going to convert a rifle press over to run 410. And so usually if you're going to find them, look at the beginning of summer when they pop up, because they're making them up for the hunting season, you know. And definitely by end of July, early August, well, September's right around the corner. That's when bird season starts. They get to be snatched up. So start looking in about mid-June to early July at all these places that sell shotgun shells looking for 410. Because if they're going to be any, that's when they're going to show up. And then when they sell out, poof, they ain't going to run no more till next year. That's the reason they're so hard to find. Killingsworth, it's okay, brother. Yeah, Kate, I saw that. Yeah, if you ever trained on a pump shotgun, you're near as fast as semi-auto. I agree. And Caesar, good evening. When I was young and we were doing a lot of hunting, I could run a 500 or an 870, usually an 870. And I would give you with your 1100 5 shells, and I'd take 5 shells, and I'd run empty before you did. I could outrun that automatic. That was when I was a lot younger. But yeah, the man knows what he's doing. He can run one. Oh, cool. Well, yeah, going exploring the Choctahatchee and everything. You are aware, Will, that the Choctahatchee River in Florida is a state park, the full length of that river, and you can camp anywhere on it. If you go look under Florida State Park, Choctahatchee, it will bring up that it is a state park and it is open for camping. And of course, that flows all the way down into the bay between Fort Walton Beach and Panama City. That's Choctahatchee Bay. So there's a lot of places in there to explore and look around with a boat. Sir Malcolm, no problem. Welcome to the party. Caesar, excellent. Want to let you know your black oil sunflower seeds for the groundhogs work like a charm. Glad to do it. Everything loves them things. Peanut butter and black oil sunflower seeds. There's very few things out in the woods that won't come to eat that. I've seen deer come to it, hogs come to it, squirrels, birds, coons, possums, everything will come to black oil sunflower seeds and peanut butter. You know, if I was going to carry two things on a trap line, it's going to be that, because I'll catch him with that. And when I told that to Dan Lutz, it's because, you know, he was a professional trapper. I'm not. I was just somebody trying to feed the family. And he said, so what was your favorite bait for da-da-da? I said, you'd laugh. He said, tell me. I said, black oil sunflower seeds and peanut butter. And he busted out laughing. He said, you're not supposed to give away trade secrets. I said, whatever's going to get in the trap I'm going to eat, yeah, something stick his head in a 110 condom bear. Mike Bolton, you can shoot a 45 long Colt in a 410 single shot. Yes. Iraqi Veteran 8888, they did a video several years ago where they were showing the dangerous practice of taking a single shot 410 and the 35 or so calibers that you could drop in the back of it and it would go bang and shoot it. They finally had to blow up the gun intentionally because it was shooting 4.54 Casull, 44 Magnum, 44 Special, 45 Colt, 30-30, 30-06, all these different calibers that they dropped in the barrel and made it go bang. So, yeah, there's a lot. That's one of the reasons that the 410 single shot with a good heavy barrel, modified choke, not full choke, is a really good survival tool because World Go to Hell, you can find there's over 35 calibers you can physically drop in and make it go bang. And so that'd be one thing for World Go to Hell. I can usually scrounge up something that's going to drop into that and go bang. And so when them chamber inserts for 12 gauge to 410, same thing. Drop it into a single shot. Not to say it's going to be hugely accurate, but it'll get the job done at close range. Okay. Isn't 444 the same length as 410? Awful close. You can use it to make 410 full length brass if you fire form it. Correct, Mike Bolton. Without any rifling, there is no ballistics in a gun. It's just a shot column going down the way. Yeah, Doug Wheeler. Yeah, Dave mentioned me by name that he had off of mine. I was talking about toggles, putting it onto it. My good friend Dan Lutz, who had his back broken in an industrial accident, and that was before we met, and he was recovering whenever we met. And Dan had a tough time leaning his head back, look over his head. And so when he'd go to tie a ridge line, he can't look up and see the ridge line real easy. So to do knots and stuff, it really caused him a lot of difficulty. And so I did a video like a couple of years ago where I talked about putting toggles in. I was doing it for Dan, putting toggles in and showing him how he could hook it up with toggles. And he could reach up and feel a toggle, without looking at it and know how to hook it up just by feel. And so I made up a ridge line with toggles on it and gave him, and I did that video. Well, Dave referenced me and thanked me for it, and he's using it in his new one. And it works really well, really quick, really fast. And it does work. The only drawback just depends. How aggressive is your 550 paracord? Because the outer hull, the outer casing, some of them are kind of slick and some of them are kind of aggressive. And you can take a piece of 550 paracord and throw it around something else and saw it, and it'll cut. So I've actually cut little small limbs in half with a piece of paracord before if it's got that real aggressive type. And on the other hand, the real slick one doesn't matter. Well, when you're pulling it tight against that bank line loop, it can cut the bank line loop if it's too aggressive. So you may want to do something else, or just what I did. I'd pull it up real close, then I would cinch up the prusik and then pull it, so it's only pulling like a half inch to make it tight. But yeah, he gave me credit for it, and I thanked him for it. And then I sent them the video that I posted of the quick deploy tarp set that I put with it. Like I showed in Advanced Woodscraft Lesson 1, the quick deploy tarp set. You use a quick deploy ridge line, and the tarp's already hooked to it, so you can hook it up real quick and set up a tarp in just a couple of minutes. So yeah, I was pretty tickled about that to hear my name on one of his things. Will Killingsworth, I have a 5-shot 38 pistol. Are there shot shells? Yes, they do make shot shells for 38 special. And they also make the little caplets to hand load them as well. And those are available, and you can find reloading data any of the manuals or online to tell you how to load shot shells. It's very easy, and I personally have loaded 38 and 44 and 45 shot shells. Yeah. Richard Hayes. When I was doing that video, it was because I had been playing around with it and I put the thing up. And somebody pointed out to me about Felix Emler. And I had never heard of Felix Emler, but we kind of stumbled on the same idea. And so I gave him credit for it. He posted it for me. Okay. So I gave him credit for him, but I was looking for using toggles, so I gave him credit for that. And then Dave gave me credit. We're all just here to share knowledge. There's nothing new under the sun. Trust me, as soon as you think you came up with something new, put it on dang video, and I guarantee you somebody will show you, 1,200 years ago, right here, it was common knowledge. We're just rediscovering stuff. If I put you in a similar situation as someone of another time with the similar equipment, having the similar skill set, you're going to come up with similar ideas. There may be some truly innovative stuff, but at the same time, a wheel is a wheel. A ridge line's a ridge line. A tarp is a tarp. Whether it was an ancient Roman, whether it was a caveman putting a bear skin over a pole, whatever, it's the same idea. We just refine it over time. Van Life Outdoors, would you be willing to make any more videos on Coleman lanterns? Yes. In fact, I have on my list over there, I've got my big gas military Coleman lantern that I've been asked to kind of go back over it a little bit. Now it's beginning of summer. I plan on doing one of those pretty soon. Once I can get back out and go to the woods, I'll take that lantern and we'll do a talk on it. We used to take and get a plate, go to the machine shop and get a plate about, as thick as your finger, made out of just, mild steel, about that big around, have them drill a hole in it and tap it. So when you unscrew the finial off the top of a Coleman lantern, you could screw that plate down on it and the heat would heat it up and you could put a coffee pot on it. And a lot of times running a trot line years and years and years ago, I would have a secured Coleman lantern that was locked down. I had a thing that would clamp onto the base so it wouldn't roll over, couldn't turn over in a boat. If the boat rolled upside down, it would be upside down. I mean, it wasn't falling out. And I'd put a coffee pot or something on it to have hot coffee on cold nights trying to float the river and pull trot lines. So little things like that we did. But yeah, I'll be glad to do that. Yeah, Richard Hayes, that's what I like. Learn no matter where the credit goes. That's where I am. Share the knowledge, brother. Good evening, Mr. Mike Simmons. How you doing, sir? Yeah, that K-Town, having one of those throw weights for you guys that's in bear country. Yeah, so handy. I tell you, my favorite thing for doing that is a short little fishing rod with a 1 ounce weight. Flip it up over a limb, hook to it, and just reel it back up and over so I can pull a cord up and over. When we were pulling down dead limbs on trees like in pecan orchards and things, forget that slinging a brick on a rip. I just take a fishing rod with a weight and flip it right over and pull it down. And if I'm going fishing anyway, it was just a 1-1. I mean, hook it to it, throw it over the line, pull your stuff up where bears can't get to, and etc., and go for it. Quick and easy. Okay, Town. Yeah, Felix is the master of Swiss Army mods. He is very impressive with that. I will give the man that. He is really good with that knife. He's researched it. He's took the time, and he is the authority as far as I'm concerned on Swiss Army knives. Jackson, like you've always said, for an M65 jacket to size up for layering. For a 37-inch chest, would you be a 38 to 42? Yes. Depending on where, if you're in real cold country, go the next size up. Where you're going to be in heavy snow, where it's going to have multiple layers under you, go one size bigger. Because remember, how many pair of long handles do you wear at a time? On top of that, you're going to have some other big, thick, bushy base layer, like a sweater or whatever, to trap air. You want your final jacket to be so large, it'll cover everything comfortably and still have pockets of warm air. So you put that cinch cord up, pull it up down here, and you got your wrist cinched up. You get your neck all cinched up, and all this is a little loose. You should be able to do this. That way that warm air circulates around as you move, as you breathe, etc. If it's tight on you, the heat just goes through it rather than radiating out and checking it. So I would say if you're in decent weather, where the winter temps are not going to get below, say, 20s or something, absolutely go with that. If it's where you go below zero where you live, go for the bigger size so that you can guarantee no matter how many layers I pile on it, I'm going to be able to fit it. Gray Wolf, ever stuck a Coleman lantern in the Coal River? You mean have you ever shattered glass on a Coleman? Yes, sir. I sure have. I had a Coleman going one night, and I went to pull up, and it was a big catfish. Catfish. And he probably had a gallon of water in him. And when I pulled him up and I got home, when I did like that, it's like I took a bucket and just dashed, and it hit that lantern. And there went the glass. So Peter, can you make a grill out of expandable metal? Yes, it can be done. Usually they're too flexible. Now, if you go look, a lot of guys do this. You go look in the paint department, they have those extruded pieces of aluminum that go into a paint bucket for you to be able to put a roller on. Those can work, but the best thing to do is when you get it, take a tent stake or a nail or something and bend a couple of those extruded lattice work where you can slide a tent stake in. So here's the extruded going between here. I want to be able to make those openings being at where I slide a tent stake through like that, because that makes it better. Because once it gets hot, it wants to become too soft, so you don't have a support. And you get it up there on two logs, and you get the heat going, and you put your pot on, the thing just bends. I want to be able to put two tent stakes or something underneath it to keep it from bending. But yes, you can do that. Yeah, Gray Wolf. We used to do that too, but we weren't doing that for fish. What we're doing is cat fishing or crappie fishing at night. Oh yeah, Van Life Outdoors had a black bear come up to me and push his nose right up to my side and smell me. Yeah, that can be a little bit irritating in the morning. Someone was with me one time, and we were camping out, and I detected something coming around us, and it was slowly getting closer and closer. And bears, what little experience I have around bears, guys, okay, but what I was taught by men who had a whole lot more experience than me, said that bears would come in and pause, and then move over here and pause, and then move back here and pause, and they'd work their way into you like that. Where a dog will circle around and around and around and spiral in. He would kind of like this. He knows it's safe to run that way, so he's preparing to run. The bear is. So he'd come in a little at a time, so it was shifting this way and shifting that way. And I didn't know. I couldn't see it. I was in a tent. I was a ground pounder. And so I did what my granddaddy said, rebel yell at the top of your lungs. And so I did a rebel yell at the top of my lungs, and this thing went crashing. I don't know if it was a bear or just a big dog. But Of course, it made my companion in the other tent have a biological accident, and he was rather upset because his blanket smelt bad. But hey, you know, you do what you got to do. Oh yeah, just in the old screen globes to go on to them. I've seen them. I haven't had one. I always had glass. Down here where I'm at with all them bugs, that'd be a fire hazard because them bugs would go up and get killed on that screen and then start burning. So I always thought the glass was bad enough. Gray Wolf, exactly. That's when I say I want support on it. I can make one out of extruded aluminum, but I got to have support. If I don't, as soon as it gets warm, it's going to go. Especially when you got like a 1-quart bush pot sitting on that sucker. You just watch it. Yeah, it goes. I've seen a couple of coffee pots go over that way where somebody, I think I'll use this. It's a lightweight grate. Dang. Got another idea? Doug Wheeler, what do you think about Sasquatch? If you're talking about Dan Lutz, a loved man. If you're talking about the creature, I will neither disprove nor anything. There's too many bits of evidence that popped up to say that it couldn't be nothing, but at the same time, how many rednecks we got in the woods every year hunting? I can see such a creature being in the far-flung backwaters, like Canada, Alaska, high mountains, even the Everglades swamps. I could possibly do that. But getting seen in some of these other places is kind of, we hunted and killed everything that walked, crawled, or flied for hundreds of years down here because we was hungry. And if such creatures were wandering around in those areas, we'd have done butchered them and give recipes for it. So I just feel that if there is such a creature, it needs to be out in there. Having said that, when me and my wife went to the Smithsonian in our honeymoon, and we went to the Natural History Museum, and you're walking around looking at all the big stuff, and they got the big old huge tank that's got the giant squid in it, and they got a blue whale in the ceiling, and you walk through the jaws of the big old megalodon, and then there was this one display they had that you turn down this little hallway going from one section to another, and at the end of that, there was like this 7.5-foot tall Bigfoot in a case. And you walk up and there's a plaque that says, this is not a Sasquatch or Bigfoot. It's actually an Australopithecus, commonly called a rock ape, and that it was in North America, Asia, and Europe, but went extinct 10,000 years ago. Now, I can tell you, as a little boy growing up in Alabama, back when they were covering such history in 4th grade, 3rd grade, something like that, and they talked about woolly rhinos and woolly mammoths and the giant bison and the American lion and the horse and the saber-toothed tigers and all that. I never once heard about a 7-foot tall primate walking around in North America. I would have remembered. And yet here they got in a case with some bone fragments and a life-size replica of it. And saying, oh, but this isn't a Bigfoot. You admit this was in America up until 10,000 years ago, but now it's extinct. Kind of curious about that. Van's Life Outdoors. Any weird, spooky camping stories? I woke up to a frog hanging from a tree tied with grass right outside my tent. I have a video. Very spooky. I have seen and heard many things in my long career. I have seen and heard things I couldn't explain how they got there or why. If you spend enough time out there, you're going to become convinced there's something out there. It is easy enough to do. I've had things that I put down just disappear, never to be seen again. Whenever I was right here, it couldn't have gone anywhere but right here, and yet just vanish. I've had things show up, that I am positive were not there the night before when I went to bed. So you're going to have things like that. Part of it is your own mind. There's been more than once I've had to just sit down, lean back up against a tree, and calm myself down, because the mind will fill in details that aren't there. And I've told the story about the time that I was in a hammock and I got attacked right at sunup, and this thing grabbed me from head to foot. I felt it grab me, and then it bit me in the side of my belly over here. I was in a mesh hammock with a blanket over me, a U.S. Army blanket. And in my mind, it grabbed me from foot to head, and it sunk its teeth right there. And I flipped and came out of it, ended up in the dirt. It was in that gray early light where you can't see more than like 20 feet, you know. And I managed to get up against a tree, grabbed a hold of my single shot shotgun, got up against a tree. I'm looking around, couldn't see anything. Looking up in the tree, looking around the tree, run my hand up under my shirt, came out bright with blood. I'm bleeding, real bleeding, not scratched, from the abdomen. And you start running down. Bear, no, bear would have just broke me and wouldn't let go. Canine, nope, canine latches on and goes to tugging and twisting, no. Cat goes for the back of the neck to paralyze you. He ain't gonna attack you this way. You know, you start thinking Bigfoot because you've run out of the other usual suspects. And when I finally got calmed down enough and pulled my shirt up and look, and it looked like big, fang marks. And what it was, are you ready? A turkey. A turkey flew down off the roost and landed on me. And that was his claws digging into me, and that was his wings slapping me from head to foot. But that wasn't what I was thinking when I rolled out of that hammock, I'll be honest with you. So, yeah, there's been things that will spook the snot out of you if you're out there long enough. Stephen, good evening. Dennis, dear, you don't watch basketball. Nope, sure don't. If I'm not in the game, it's not that interesting. Don't watch a lot of football either, because if I'm not playing, it's not that interesting. Poor Boy Adventures, the stick that I cut is ironwood. If you'll look up in the Book of Trees, there's several different regional names for it. But down here in my part of the South, we call it ironwood, and it looks like just a knotted up forearm. When you walk up to it, you learn to see it. You'll never miss it again. It's a very hard, dense, and the grain just spirals all the way through it. And as long as you keep it relatively whole and make a walking stick out of it, yeah. A second choice, but you'll never find a piece long enough and straight enough, is sparkleberry, which is a form of hawthorn, I think. And that, once it dries, man, it's like iron. But those two are the toughest. Of course, hickory's real good. Osage oranges are really good. I just prefer ironwood. And I've had that stick probably 20 years. A lot of my stuff, guys, I've had so long, I can't even tell you how long. I got to go back in my mind and remember adventures where I had this stick or I had this piece of gear and stuff. Sometimes it's all the way back to the 70s. I had that mess kit in the 70s. That type deal. Yeah, Richard Hayes. Sasquatch, the creature that wants to be found, but nobody can find him. Right. John Bentley, your idea for 3 stainless steel steaks makes the best coffee. I just take 3 of them, put them 1, 2, 3, put whatever my fire is, and just set the pot on top. Especially if it's quick. I'm not going to be here long. I'm just heating up a meal, boiling water, boiling coffee, whatever. It's quick and easy. And then once I get the coffee made, a lot of times for those, I'm going to use real small little bitty tinder really to do it, and probably 1 or 2 pine cones, and that's it. I want it to go out in 10 minutes. I want a burst of heat, and I want to have tent stakes long enough where I put that pot on it. It's up in the air, up in the heat column, not smothering it, but it works. As soon as it gets a good boil and I pull it out and I poured my meal or whatever, I set it offside. I'm letting it cool. I'm going to take a stick. I'm going to pull up them tent stakes and lay them over and let them be cooling while I'm eating. By the time I'm done eating, usually those steaks are cool enough to handle, and so's that pot. And so quick and easy. Make sure the fire is fully out and on the way. I've seen, we're trying to hike and trying to get from place to place, and I've seen guys pull out these origami stove sets and put it together and fire that blowtorch up and heat water and leave it hooked up and running for like a minute after they pull the pot off, because they can't think to turn it off, then pick up the pot. And then whenever we get done ready to move, we got to wait 20 minutes for the pot to cool down, or wait for the stove to cool down before you can put it back in the little mesh bag. So always think ahead. If this action takes the most time, put it early, so it's had time to do whatever. Oh yeah, Gray Wolf. As far as a walking stick, you have a beaver stick. Yep, for the beaver to clean the bark. I had one of those when I was young. Me and my granddaddy went down to a beaver pond to fish, and I went up and was looking at the dam. And one of the limbs that was sticking out, I was able to pull out, and it was about the right size for me as a walking stick. And it was not much bigger than a broom handle and about as long, but I was little, and I was able to use that, and that became my walking stick. And Granddaddy held on to that till I kind of outgrew it. It used to stay up under the porch. There was come around the side of the porch, we had the beams, and he had nailed cross members where you could slide 2x4s or whatever in to keep them up off the ground away from termites to reuse them. And my walking stick stayed there. When I'd go to visit Granddad, I'd go get my walking stick, and we'd go walk the woods or go check out the pond or whatever, till I finally outgrew that stick. It was big medicine back in them days to have a beaver stick. Jeff, would oak be good for walking sticks? Yes, it works very well too. Richard Hayes, turkey landing on me would make me grab for a gun. I would have too. By the time, what happened was he landed, he flared out, he was molting. I figured out later from looking at the feathers that were underneath his roost tree. When I'd set up after dark, I didn't know there was a turkey roosting in that tree. And when he flew down from the roost, he landed on that green log. Well, that green log was me in that hammock. So when he hit, boom, he dug his claws in. Of course, I jumped. He launched off of me. So as I'm coming out of the hammock this way, he's gliding that way. And he landed about 15, 20 yards from me and took off running. So when I'm doing all my theatrics, he's done gone. By the time I got my gun, he was done out of there. But it was a mystery for a little bit. I was powerful concern for a couple of minutes. Mike Simmons, here's a rarity. Shitting wood. It's mentioned in the Bible, and there's a grove of it in Huntsville, Alabama. There used to be this guy that would come to the gun shows around here, and he would bring about a 8x8 block of shitting wood, and it is the exception to the rule. When you picked it up, it was like it was styrofoam. Then he'd tell you to take your pocket knife and try to cut a sliver off of it. That block that big, it felt like it weighed 3 ounces. And yet, with my razor sharp pocket knife, it was like I was trying to cut sheet metal. It just, you dull your knife. And I said, "Where'd you get this?" He said, "Road crew had to come in and cut a tree down for something." And said it took 3 blades on a Poland chainsaw to cut that block. It'll just dull anything. And I've only time I've ever seen such wood. But apparently it only grows in far-flung Middle East, and there's a grove in Huntsville, Alabama of it. Nobody has a clue where that came from. So tough wood. Yeah, K-Town, a lot of times the yellow birch is a kind of a, if it's not fully dried out, it's going to be a popping into, when they call it poplar, is water pockets in it. Pop, bang, pop, throw sparks everywhere. Peter, yeah, that was one of the favorites we used to do. Was when I was working with Boy Scouts, we'd put sterno down and 3 uh, steel tent stakes and set the mess kit up on top of it and heat it up that way. Worked really good. Great up under a tarp. Kids can do that and not set everything on fire. So it was a good way to do it. Yeah, Richard, no alarm clock needed that morning, Blackie. You can't to say what noises you made. I put a lot of effort into my statement. I'll put it that way. Because I didn't know what was grabbing a hold of me, but I knew this was going to be a fight. And I was kind of disappointed, to be honest, whenever I hit the dirt and I come up swinging, expecting to impact something big right there. It's on, and I hit nothing. And then you think it's behind you. You spin around like you see in the movies, and finally, when I grabbed my gun, slammed up against the tree, it can't come behind me. And I'm looking at the tree and I'm expecting something to jump out. And you had that heart thump, 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 thump moment. Is it a bear? Is it a this? Is it a whatever? Because, it's got to be big enough to grab from my head to my feet and bite me. So I'm thinking, 150-pound mountain lion, black bear, Rottweiler. Turkey was not in the top 10. Peter, how does wood become petrified? It's a mineral process where the wood is buried and then it has no oxygen there, so it doesn't decompose. Over time, mineral replaces the wood, keeping the pattern and everything. Kind of like you think of if I take a block of wood and I submerge it into epoxy and it absorbs the epoxy. Well, petrified wood is a rock. It's just representing what was the wood. You can still see the grains in it and everything, but it is actually a rock it's turned, the mineral content turned to rock, and like a photograph, an image of what was there, which was the wood, is what's preserved. Petrified wood is actually a rock. It's where it's exchanged. Same thing where dinosaur bones become a fossil. It's a rock that is the same shape and makeup as the bone, and even have the internal wood, but there's no biological component left. It's just mineral now. Very touchy process. Pam W says tulip poplar is not poplar. I think it's magnolia. It's in the magnolia family. He's correct. Tulip poplar is not a poplar, but it looks and acts so much like it, it's commonly called a tulip poplar. Shannon Davis, persimmon makes a good walking stick too. Very true. I have had very little interaction with persimmon. I had a few family members that had persimmons on their land, and you were forbidden to touch them. So I didn't get to, I cut switches all the time and cut stuff off of pear trees and plum trees and even fig trees. But don't you touch that persimmon tree. So, okay. Pecan is not that good. Pecan and hickory are first cousins. But the difference is in the wood. Hickory, there's these locking fibers that go between the grains, and it gives it its strength. Pecan doesn't have that. And that's one of the reasons pecan wood likes to split so cleanly. And so if somebody says, a big old pecan stump up there, I got no problem splitting that sucker. A modest hit, and it starts just dividing. And so you don't see them made into walking sticks. You can. But if you put a load bear onto it, it wants to split. And so pecan is something we were always taught, don't use pecan for any kind of load bearing. Use it for looks, yes, but not load bearing. That's where sparkleberry and ironwood came in. true. Gray wolf, a sloth can do it if they were in South Alabama. Doug Wheeler, while you're at it, what is the meaning of life? What is best in life? To crush your enemies, see them driven before you, and hear the lamentation of the women. Conan. Donald Mike Gideon, hello there, sir. Oh, yeah, gray wolf, trumpeter swans. I've heard they make a racket when they take off. Doug Wheeler, no problem, brother. Correct, Jonathan. As I understand, they said the Ark of the Covenant was made from shitting wood. And that's what made it so odd that when the early people came in to this part of, into Alabama and found that grove of shitting wood up there, the question is, how did it get there? Because it grows in the Middle East, you know, and so who brought it in, put it in? I've heard the Knight Templars. I've heard religious pilgrims. I've heard Vikings. I've heard that it's one of the things where it just shouldn't be here, and yet there it is. When I was working the scout camp, Camp Alaflo, as a shooting sports director back in the 90s, and the camp director had just graduated from forestry school, and Mr. Bill, who worked with all the reptiles, was a 40-year forestry agent out of Florida. And we would challenge each other, and I'd come in and on my bunk would be some sort of leaf on the pillow, and I was supposed to figure out what it was, and we'd play that game. And I was out in the woods on that camp with some Boy Scouts doing some stuff, and I saw this tree. I had never seen anything like it, and I got a leaf, and when I came back and looked it up, it did not make sense. So I got a leaf, I went and put it on Bill's cot, and I put it on the head dog's cot. And so that night at supper, all of them have had several hours to look at it and everything, and they're all kind of quiet. I said, okay, well, what did you know? You two are the college-educated foresters here in dendrology. I'm just merely a woodsy guy. And Bill said, you found this live. You didn't just bring this in as a joke. I said, I found it on these premises, and I can take you to the tree after we get done eating. And so the three of us went back to that tree, and we agreed it was Arctic tamarack. Now, what is it doing in lower Alabama in the woods? But it was very, very near a 1950s Boy Scout hut that had collapsed in. So we're figuring somebody in the Boy Scouts, probably coming to the military base here, had probably brought one and planted it. But Arctic tamarack can't survive in a semi-tropical jungle, and yet here's this tree flourishing. So strange things happen. Jonathan Frisbee, the meaning of life, the universe and everything. The answer is 42. The question, that will take 1,000,000 years to come up with. The answer is 42. Yes, Richard, it's the same word by a different name. The anglicized word is gopher wood, but and we spell it like that, gopher, like the animal. It doesn't mean that. It isn't that. It would actually be like the guy that runs Gets Coffee is the gopher. That's kind of like what it's pronounced, but the actual name of the wood is shitting wood. And so it's one of those things where translations are getting it. But the tree is called a shitting tree and is known in the Middle East. It's a very rare tree. It's almost extinct. And so how it got to Huntsville, Alabama, who knows? I have a good friend that lives in Huntsville. And he went over and at one point took a picture of it. And it's kind of like balsa wood, but there's a density to it that you just dull a knife. It's like magic. You can take a sharp knife and you start pushing and you get it like an inch two and it gets like it won't push anymore. And it's dull as a rock. And it's kryptonite for knives. If I wouldn't destroy a chainsaw to get a piece, I'd love the joke of that would be hilarious. But anyway. Storm Weather, thank you very much for the support and glad you enjoy the channel. Peter, I have heard that too. The Lost Tribes of Israel planted it. We had a early there's a trail here in Alabama named after him, and he was an explorer that came down here and wrote about the Southeast in Alabama and the Native American tribes, and he was convinced that the Creek Nation was one of the lost tribes of Israel. And he wrote about it, and it's something trail or something. I'm drawing a blank. Chuck, if you're still in here, what's the name of that trail? There at Toulouse, they've got a section marked. Is it Bartram? I'm drawing a blank, but it's something like Bartram or something like that, Bartram Trail. And it's where he was a naturalist, and he went through and he became convinced that the Native Americans down here in the Southeast were actually one of the lost tribes, because the words were so similar to Hebrew and things like that. Yahweh was God, and Yahweh was a Creek word and things like that. So I think it was Bartram. Ah, cool. Sir Malcolm, I don't know. Sweet gum splits easy. Black gum makes a real tough stick. You don't split black gum. Again, like the ironwood, the grain just goes all through it. It will never split clean. You know, that was always the joke we had whenever you get some Yankee down here and he wanted to learn how to, you'd put a big old block of black gum up there and give him an axe, and it just don't split. So if you get black gum, which often grows around sweet gum, use that as a walking stick. But sweet gum, again, it's too soft wood. It splits too easy. Thank you very much, Sir Malcolm. Bartram Trail, that's it. Thanks, Chuck. Southern Partisan, thank you very much. I've spent a lot of time learning the history of my part of the South. It's as rich a history as anywhere else, but it kind of got glossed over because it came in, the revolution happened, and then immediately after the revolution was the big rush into Ohio and all those places. And down here in the South kind of got overlooked. Well, we didn't have newspapers and stuff that telegraphed it, and this was still Louisiana back down, or Spanish holding. It was still kind of a gray area as to who owns this. And so they didn't come down here much. And then after they made the Louisiana Purchase, and all of this had officially become part of the U.S., and Alabama became a state in 1819, they were running west, you know, and in the Mountain Man era and the Plains Indians, and we were kind of the backwater. And because of that, they just didn't, it was recorded, but it wasn't made nationally known as much because of that. And I spent a lot of time kind of researching my state and immediately around me. I found a lot of very interesting things that just glossed over. They don't even talk about it in books. Yeah, Gray Wolf, that's the thing. A lot of the history of Alaska is Russian history because it was part of Russia. It's also Courrier de Bois, French Canadian history. Then there's native history, which is the vast majority of it. So, like down here, we were a melting pot of multiple Indian tribes, multiple European powers, all in one like 300-mile circle. And each one vying for control, each one. And so when you go to talking about, all right, whose history we're talking about? You want to talk Spanish history of the area? You want to talk French history of the area? You want to talk native history of the area? You want to talk English history of the area? You know, which tribe are we talking about? You know, because they had slightly different ideas. And who didn't like who at the time, so they're going to write about it, but they're always going to talk down about them. So, yes, K-Town, that's how you tell the two families. A red pine will have 3 needles. White pine has 5. 3 letters in red, 5 letters in white. 5 letters in white. That's how you tell the difference between which family they're in. You know, and same thing with oaks. If it's a yellow meat, it's one of the red oak family. If it's a white meat, it's one of the white oak varieties. Now, there's a lot of different oak trees in those two families, but you can divide it instantly into which is which. You know, is it a red oak family or is it a white oak family by the color of the meat of the acorn? Gray wolf, there was I want to say it was back in the 40s. I think it was actually right at the beginning of World War II that somebody down there near Galveston, Texas, found Roman greaves, which are the leg guards, 1 or 2 Roman gladius short swords, and some fittings for shields that he found in Texas. And World War II kind of ended any investigation to it. So they found Roman stuff down there. Well, if a Roman ship gets caught in the current and ends up in America, they ain't going home. Could it be? It's probably something like that, probably a shipwreck. Rome had a lot of huge, big seagoing ships, and if one got in one of them big old battles over there somewhere in the Atlantic and everybody got killed or whatever, and the boat just went to floating, it could have ended up in Texas. Just like after the big tsunami and all, and for a couple of years after it, stuff out of Japan was showing up in California and Washington State, whole boats, you know, whole fishing boats just run up on the bank. There's nobody on board. Y'all didn't notice this coming across the ocean? It's a big area, but it'd be floating things. Someone that was talking to me at one time, they live in Los Angeles, and they would take trips going up and down the coast highway just looking at things. And he said you'd see hot tubs floating up, you know, landing up on the beach where they washed out to sea, and now they floated all the way across due to the currents. So up there in Alaska, there's bound to be something, but where is it? That's the question. Doug Wheeler, thank you very much. That's the question. Where's it at? Because over time and stuff, the actual shoreline is varied greatly. Remember the 1960s earthquakes up there that really upheavaled a lot of Alaskan shoreline. So there's a lot of stuff up there. Who knows what we could find up there if we get digging enough, but hard to get around. There ain't hardly that many roads in Alaska. Richard, what's on your slate for the next couple of months? Well, let's see. In the 1st of June, me and Bear are going to Blade Show. Toward the end of June, I'm going to Pathfinder. I'm going up there to work with Trinity. Mike Simmons says he's coming up to that, so I'll get to see him. And then after that, it'll be the heat of summer, and I'm planning on doing quite a few projects, what I call the summer count. Those guys that live in the cold country, you know what I'm talking about in the dead of winter, when you just don't want to do nothing, you have to stay in. Well, when it gets to be 110 and 90% humidity, the old doc just don't want Blackie to be out in that kind of heat for very long, because it can stress me a little bit. And so I have to kind of time myself, go out in the mornings, do my videos, do my stuff, and then work on other projects. I've got several gun projects I want to do about antiquing. I got a couple of guns I've been saying for several years. Excuse me, I'm going to antique and do a full finish on them. I'm planning on doing that. And a couple other projects I've got going, and some trips and things planned. We'll see. And then in the fall, after it comes back up, I'm at this time planning to go to Georgia Bushcraft again. I've got some, I'll be going up there to work with JJ and them for that. And that's all I know right now. And then the first weekend of October, Miss Pam and a couple other people are planning on coming up and us having a thing out at my gathering thing. It's not an official gathering. It's just we're going to go hang out and camp. So that's at this time what I've got lined up, subject to change by what's going on. K-Town, why you would live in LA, I have no idea. In their case, those friends I was talking about, they were tech people, computer tech stuff. And so that's where the job was. Now today, after the big changes where people now work remotely, I don't see why they're still staying there. To be honest with you, I'd have done DD miled on out of there and found me someplace I like better. I can work from home. See, you know what his job is, you can work from home. Fred Frapper, yes, they have found evidence, all kinds of Viking stuff down here, all over the place. The Clovis people, they always talk about Clovis, New Mexico, the Clovis. Look at the Clovis site. Southeast Alabama is eat up. The county I'm in, Dale County, Alabama, has more Clovis sites than all the Rocky Mountains combined. But they say, oh, but they came in from that way. Then they beelined it straight to the southeast and became a southeast type individual, because they're all over the southeast sites down here. And there's hardly any in the Rockies and none in Washington State or anything else. So this idea they came down, it's pretty much a pre-gone conclusion now that they came over from Europe. The Solutreans in southern France, working their way along the ice sheet, hunting walrus, ended up coming to America. So the Vikings, same idea. Generations later, people know there's something there. What was Lewis and Clark looking for? The Northwest Passage. What was Christopher Columbus looking for? The Northwest Passage. There's this legend in Europe all the way back to the Roman times talking about where you could go across over a continent and go from Europe to China by sea. Well, it is. You just got to go above Canada through the Arctic Ocean. But they believed it did it. Lewis and Clark believed that you could go up to Missouri. They got some indication that you could go all the way up to the headwaters of Missouri and then come out from under a mountain. And on the other side of a mountain was another river that flowed and came to Columbia and flowed all the way to the Pacific. And so you could bring goods and services up to Missouri to here and then just wagon train it around to there and then take it down. 300 miles of Rocky Mountains between those 2 points. But there is physically a connection. At the Continental Divide, there is a creek that emerges out from under a rock slab, and it goes and splits and goes to both sides of the Continental Divide. One eventually flows into the Missouri headwater, and the other one flows into the Columbia headwater. So technically, you could walk, swim from the Gulf of Mexico all the way to the Pacific Ocean by standing in water. You'd have to go all the way up the river, go all the way up that creek, step across and down, technically. But up there at the top, it's about 6 inches wide and a ½ inch deep. But technically, there is a water passage. It's one of them things. Okay, wait a minute. I saw something up there. And Doug Wheeler, if I didn't say so before, thank you very much. Oh, cool. Yeah, Chuck. Things fall off of ships all the time. You never know what you're going to find. Chuck, it's at Watkinsville, up there near Athens. You know, Atlanta, go right, Athens. It's Watkinsville. If you'll go online and just punch in and Google search Georgia Bushcraft Gathering, it'll bring up and give you maps and everything to get there. It's a relatively, once you come off of 20, it's a relatively easy to get there. Just you can be at 20 and punch in your GPS and it'll take you right to the site. Well, if you want to talk about the Pocket Navy, Blue Rose, what's your question? Gray Wolf. Those little bitty Pocket Navies are great. Mine is not accurate enough. Well, I take that back. It shoots well, but it shoots better with a conical. And I've been playing around with it. I wanted it to be just a bunny buster. Man, that thing is perfect. But mine groups about like this, which is fine, but you know. And but with conicals in that thing, it actually groups tighter. Mine unusually likes conicals better. But I got it and was hoping it'd be a real tack driver, so I'd have a real ultralight little one to go popping bunnies with, and it works. But I haven't found how to dial it. I'm hoping over time of shooting it, it laps it in, it'll get a little bit more. I haven't got probably more than 200 or 300 rounds through it, and I figure when I get close to 1,000, it ought to be as good as it's going to get. So we'll go play with that. Steve Kingsbury, good evening, sir. Glad you made it. Doug, thank you very much. Peter, Blackie, what knots and lashing do you think a woodsman should know? Definitely need to know the trucker's hitch. Definitely need to know how to do a clove hitch. Bowline knot, definitely. Lashing, just study basic lashing. And I believe, okay, I do a Bushcraft zip tie, which is just a length of cord tied with the 2 knots and 1 knot on the other end, and set it up. That's how I put up most of my tripods and stuff like that, instead of doing fancy lashing, because I'm going to put up a tripod, I'm going to drop a hook down, I'm going to hang a pot, and I'm going to cook a meal, and I'm moving on. I'm not going to spend a half hour and 50 feet cord lashing to hold a 2-pound pot. I just put a piece of bank line around and pull it tight and spread the legs out, it'll hold. If I'm going to be doing structural lashing, so I'm trying to build a bridge, I'm trying to build an elevated platform or whatever, it's got to be load bearing. That's when you need to learn your lashing, multiple fraps and pulling lashing. I believe everybody needs to know those if you're going to be building that type of deal. The rest of it comes down to personal choice. The taut line can hold guy lines and stuff, and yet will slip if it's life and death, which can be a good thing. Keep your tarp from being destroyed. It would slip rather than just rip it out. And a lot of people don't understand the function of that. But I think I've got a series on knots. If you go look at my playlist, and I'm pretty sure I do. I know I did a series at one point and look at it. And if you got any questions beyond that, I'll be happy to work with you. Oh no, Gordon, I hope you're okay. Car's still drivable, that's a plus. Yeah, choke me up, Prusik knots, yes. Justin, does the Remington Pieta clone have to be modified for paper cartridges? I did not have to modify mine. But what I do is I will, I put the chamber not underneath the rammer, but out to the side, and I put it in, I thumb press it down, then I rotate it under the rammer. I see a lot of people trying to rotate it and thread it in under the rammer. I put it here and rotate it under the rammer, and I put paper cartridges in mine, and I haven't had to modify mine at all. Some do. I know several guys have watered theirs out, but I haven't had to do it. Worm Wrangler, Blackie, do you ever go to Highland Games at Grandfather Mountain? I have gone to it in the past. The Alabama Red Wolves, I'm part of it. One time we went around and did Scottish games. And so we went to Grandfather Mountain and we went to several other southern Highland games. And so I have been there. I was up on stage there once or twice where we did what was called a pre-1840 fashion show. And we'd get up there in our historic costume and we'd talk about the history of Scottish migration into the South. That was my group. I was part of that group. Our leader was Grouch McGowan. Yep. James Singer, thank you very much. Did I on the 1851 or the 1860s? No, I did not. And I have shot paper cartridges in all of them. Maybe I'm a little more fiddly than they are. I don't know. But usually whenever I put the cartridge in, I come out here on the side and I put it in that way. And then I just kind of hook the base, tip up and push down and push it in with my thumb. Yeah, it's like a two-step push, but I can get it in there without any problem. Now, the guys that want to use them in competition, I can see wallering that out to make it where you can just slap them in there. I can see that. But I haven't had to modify mine. I think I did modify one for a video on one of my percussion revolver things. I think I did show how to do it. I took a Dremel tool and opened it up a little bit and polished. But I don't remember which one I did. I seem to recall I did it in a video. Most anything just to show it being done, as opposed to the other. John Bentley, my sister wants to start deer hunting. Any recommendations on a beginner? I told her 12 gauge. If she's going to be up close in the stand, 12 gauge is great. Start her out with birdshot, then move to 2 3/4 buckshot, and then finally to 3-inch buckshot. Realizing the range. Go get those, those poster boards you used to get in school that you get all your projects on and stuff. Get one of those. Put it up out there, how far out you want to start up, and have her shoot it. See how many holes is in it. And figure out her depth, how far away she can reliably hit. Don't shoot beyond that. Modified choke works with buckshot just fine. Full choke is no, because those slug and buck are too big for full chokes. They damage the choke. A modified will handle it. And go from that and finally go to a slug. Let her practice with that. But remember, hold the gun blood tight against you. Relax your body. Squeeze the trigger. It should just rock you backwards. Don't try to hold it out like that. It gets a running start to hit you. So pull it as tight as you can hold it against your body and just relax your body. And then it'll just rock you back. I taught shotguns to Cub Scouts and Boy Scouts, skeet and everything else. And I had these kids busting. They burn through a box of shells like lightning. Little bitty old kid, he ain't got a body weight over 75 pounds. And that kid's just running shells and having a great time. So, and doesn't even bruise them. Just pull it up tight and you're good to go. Justin, Blackie, have you ever made black powder? I have played with it a little bit in the past. I am not an authority, and that guy on YouTube, Everything Black Powder, I think is the guy's name. His name of his channel. He talks about making black powder and etc. There's plenty of videos out there on making black powder. I've experimented with it a little bit for my use, but I have not made any, and I haven't done any video, and I have no plans to make a video on making it. That's stepping off in deep water right there. Yeah, James Singer, that Kerr bullet. I love the Kerr and I love the Johnson Dow. Of the two, I like the Kerr better. And I really was surprised by that because I really liked the Johnson. But I'm going to take that Kerr shot as accurately, if not better, and was easier to load. Oh, okay. Andy Blue, you replaced the barrel on, replaced the cylinder, excuse me, on an 1860 Army. And what I recommend, I like the Tresco nipples that you get from Taylor's and Company. Now, I don't automatically change, but here's the thing. Just pre-COVID or whatever, Italy seemed to change the design of their nipples. And the orifice, the hole inside the flash hole is, got bigger. And I pulled out ones I've had from 20 years ago and put the modern side of it, and it's definitely a lot bigger hole. And it's allowing a lot more pressure to blow back. And in my little pocket Navy, it was ridiculous. And a couple other guns I've had, I've changed them out for that. And those Trescos are bronze-like material, and they don't burn out, and that hole is a lot smaller, and it gets more focus and a lot less back pressure. And I get a set of them from Taylor and Company, and I like them. Now, you can get the slick shots. They're a good nipple, but I just like the Trescos. So, hope that helps. Yeah, Gray Wolf. 30-30 is a very, very effective gun at 100, 150 yards, depending on what you're shooting. Nobody complained about this performance on game. They complained about that flat bullet and that trajectory. But, you know, I live in thick country. And because of that, you're down here, you got 25, 30, 40-yard shots are common in thick cover. And that's where 30-30 is just outstanding. But if you go put Levolution ammo with that pointed bullet into it, it'll do anything at 308. It'll do that at 300 yards then. And I've got friends that have got scopes on Marlins, and they'll put Levolutions into it, and they're shooting out to 450 yards with it and taking deer at 300 yards. But this guy used to be a scout sniper in the Marine Corps. So trust me, he's got experience. But it will perform the job. 30-30 is not a bad choice. Cody, I've seen a 58 Remington revolving carbine. Have you shot one? Yes. And I'll be honest with you, it's not a fun experience. When you come up here so close, you can't put your hand up here because if it chain fires, it's going to eat up your hand. The gas blowing out around that cylinder will cut you if you get your hand like this underneath. So you got to do like this and cup it. And still, when you shoot, it's like somebody slaps you in the face. That pressure blowing back, it's like somebody slaps you in the face. And that's the reason that design did not excel back in the day, was for that very reason. And so with mild target loads, yes, it's fun. But when you load it up full power, wanting to hunt with it, I tried one. It wasn't mine. A friend loaned me one, let me play with it. And after about 2 or 3 months, I found I could be just as accurate with my 1860 Army as I could be with that, even though it had that long barrel. It's caused that slap in the face every time. I just couldn't get accurate with it because every time you pull the trigger, you're going to get slapped. That was just me. Your experience may be different than mine. K-Town, yeah. I like the timber hitch, the Marline spike hitch, etc. Like I talked about in videos, down here we get stormed, them trees go to sawing, and you've got a ridge line up there, it will pull them knots blood tight. So I want something I can get out. And so being able to pull a spike out of a Marline or pull a timber hitch or something like that, because once that sucker pull that tight, that's the only way I'm getting it out of there. And it's just easier to pull a stake out or whatever in those conditions. But be flexible. Most time when I walk up, I'm just going to tie a timber hitch because I'm old, and that's what I've been kind of trained myself to do. But if we got bad storms coming and I need more line because I'm having to stretch it out, where I can't go around that 5-foot tree and use that extra line, I'll use the Marline spike because it takes less line than having to double back, make them loops. I'll just put the Marline spike up over the tent stake or something like that, a good strong green stick, and tie it up. And it works really well. Sir Malcolm, for getting started with casting your own lead 36 and 44 powder revolvers, what company makes a good mold that won't break the bank? LeePrecision.com. Now go to Lee, find the mold you're interested in, and then go look up on one of their tabs or on their channel. It will say online dealers. If it's $22 from Lee, it's $18 from a dealer. They let their dealers undersell them. See? So go look, get the mold number, go look on eBay, see if one pops up for cheap. I've seen that happen too, where I'm getting out and I'm getting rid of my molds, and it could bring it up that way. Or go to one of the online dealers and get it a little cheaper. But I've used Lee molds my whole career and been very, very happy with them. When you start looking for like, you want one of the curved bullets or whatever, you got to go to Arizona bullet molds. And those are really, really good molds. They're a little bit of an investment, but they're really, really good molds. So. Yeah, Blue Rose, yeah. I know what you're talking about. I've had guns come to me that had been for Civil War reenactors. And they just run around dry, either shooting blanks, and then the battle kept going, and they didn't take time to reload, and so they're just going click, click, click. And it looked like you took a ball peen hammer to the nipple on these things. They just obliterated. Gun never shot a real round, ever. And I picked it up for cheap, replaced all the nipples, had to replace the hammer because the face of the hammer was so mangled up. Replaced the bolt, and I think the hand. And it was like a brand new gun. I think I fired the first live round there been down that gun, but it shot very, very well. But a lot of times you find used guns and it's been in the hands of one of the reenactors, they love to dry fire. Yeah, Blue Rose, the 1860 Army stocks, 51 Navy stocks and things. They're pretty pricey for that. But the quality does vary on them. Richard Hayes, I agree with you. 30-30 has probably been 44 Winchester was the deer cartridge until the 30-30 came around, which was 30 Winchester. Marlin called it 30-30 because they're never going to put the word Winchester on their barrels, so they will not say that. They call it 44-40, not 44 Winchester. And they don't call it 30-30. They don't call it 30 Winchester. They call it 30-30. Just an old tradition of Marlin. But once that cartridge came out, it was the go-to. It's killed bear, moose, everything. That was a rugged, reliable gun that worked. And even today, a lot of times when you look at the magazines, the guy's hunting whatever in Canada, Alaska, or wherever, and he's sitting here with his big prize propped up, and they got the new Uber rifle and everything. If you look past him in the background, a lot of times it's the guide, and half the time he's holding a lever action. He hunts for a living. He takes these city boys out hunting, and he's got to be able to shoot fast and accurate when they mess up. So no bolt action is ever going to outperform a lever action in speed. And you're thinking automatically better. They jam up in the cold. lever action work in that kind of cold condition. So a lot of them guys in them far-flung places, it's an old 30-30 or a Marlin or some sort of Winchester or whatever in it, because those guns work. Yes, Blue Rose, I can do a video on what molds I use. Give me a second and I'll write that down. Okay, so I won't forget that. Outback Owl, good evening to Australia. Yeah, if you Blue Rose, if you got one from that far back, made in the early 70s, a lot of those guns you can pick them up for $49 and a brass frame, 51 Navy, and it was really meant for the Civil War reenactment guys to have a noisemaker. The quality was not very good, the rifling was not very good, and they were not accurate guns. The modern makes are 10 times more accurate. But a lot of times guns like that, you can do a lot of work and still not be a good shooter. I'm not trying to dissuade you, but it was what the focus was of the day. In those late 60s, early 70s guns were noisemakers. And literally, I can remember them being advertised in the back of comic books and shooting mags. $49 gets you a 51 Navy brass framed 36 caliber, order it through the mail. And there's a lot of people had them things for noisemakers and Civil War reenactments. Oh yeah, Blue. How those stocks are made. Some of them are laminate, so it's like it's plywood, but it's actually laminate, thin layers, and others just look like a board they cut out and shape. Tim Lacey, I agree. Lever actions are good guns. Okay, Grey Wolf. Blackie, did you not recommend setting up your cap and ball guns to not actually contact the cones in your videos at the time? Set them to the right depth. And what I mean is, and it comes down to manufacturer. A lot of the modern guns, they've eliminated this because of modern CNC machining. But if ignition got a little spotty where you're pulling it, getting a lot of clicks, and then it goes off every couple of tries, it could be that the nipple is screwed in just a grut too much. So you'd back it out like an eighth of a turn, and it would compact. On the other end, if the hammer's always hitting that cap, it batters up the end of it. So the trick I would do is I'd take a little piece of masking tape and I would stick it on the nipple. And then I would let the hammer down, not, pull the trigger, but let the hammer all the way down. And then I would cock and see if it left a mark. A lot of times I'd put me a little grease or something, just see if it does. That means, is the hammer physically touching the end at all the way down, or is it the hit that makes it go and hit it? I kind of want it to have that little bit of a couple thousandths of a gap so that when I put the cap in there, it busts the cap, but it's not battering that nipple. On the other hand, if that nipple is sticking back a little too far where the hammer's hitting it like a nail, it peens it. It starts getting bigger and bigger, and you actually look at the end of the nipple and it kind of flares out because it's being hit by the hammer so much. Caps start falling off and everything else because it's actually it's hard to push a cap on. So there's a dial-in depth, if you would, of it. So that was what I was talking about. Make sure it's not every time slamming that thing into it where it's really too long, because it will batter up into that nipple a little bit and you'll have less life with it. Good night, K-Town. Thank you, Miss Pam. And good night. Yep, it's about time to call it quits, ain't it, guys? Well, guys, thank you very much. Outback Owl, when is your next run of haversacks? Please let me know how much included. The last time I shipped to Australia and New Zealand, I think it was $29 shipping. I think. Okay. So I believe it ended up being total cost. It was $85 for the haversack. I think total cost was like $115. No. Yeah, like $110, $115, something in that ballpark, because it was like almost $30 to ship to Australia from up here. But when I will make a video probably toward the end of the month, because spoiler alert, I got in the Blackbird haversacks today for the current run. They arrived about a half hour before this video. So I will be going through them tomorrow, stamping my logo and getting them ready. And hopefully they will ship out either late tomorrow or they'll ship out Monday. Those that bought the Nighthawk combo with that, that's coming first of the week, because those are en route to me now. When they'll arrive first week, then I'll put them together and mail them. But if you bought just a haversack, I'll be mailing them out realistically probably Monday morning. They'll hit out, and probably with luck by the end of the week, I'll send out the rest of the stuff. And so week or so from now, once I get the go ahead from Jay at the manufacturing, I will do a video announcing the next run. Everybody that's already on my early list, which is Down and Dirty Woods with an S, craft.com, scratch that, excuse me, Down and Dirty Woodscraft at gmail.com. That's correct, gmail.com. I put people on the list there where they say put me on the list. I'll contact them first, tell them we're about to have a run, let them throw and get in because they'd asked early, and then I'll make the video, and anything remaining, let everybody know. So that's what's going to be coming up, hopefully. So guys, that's 2 hours. I greatly appreciate y'all coming and spending time with me. Thank you very much, and thank you so very much for all the support. Till next time, guys, I'm Blackie, wishing you safe journeys, and have a great night, guys.